Hi guys, welcome again to this fifth video in our Terraform series. For our last video, we introduced the issue of variables, and we extensively looked at the different variable types, So today we will continue to look at what data sources are and do a couple of practical examples on how we can use data sources. And also we'll continue looking at how we can use variables. Then we'll also look at what we're calling dynamic blocks. So with that, I will just go into so we looked at the different types of variables. We looked at string variables. We looked at numbers. Looked at a Boolean. You know what a Boolean variable is. We will look at what a list variable is. We looked at maps, and we also made mention about input variables, whereby if you don't pass a default variable, then you will be prompted to pass it at runtime, right? You'll be prompted to pass it at runtime. So today we'll look at something we call data source. So remember in the previous examples, if I can pull up this, in previous example, when we were trying to create this instance, right? One of the things is we passed this AMI as a variable, but we gave it a default value. How did we get this value? So we went on the console. We went on the console and searched for this AMI, right? We went on the console and searched for this AMI in our region. Then once we got the AMI from this particular region, then we basically pasted it here, because as we said, AMIs are region specific. But what if now we want to have it in such a way that we don't have to manually go and find the AMI, but what we are trying to do is we want to use a data source. We want Terraform to go into AWS and search for this particular AMI, or search for the latest AMI that it can get, and then return it back to us and basically use that as our AMI. So with that, this is what we are going to use, what we call a data source. We're going to use a data source. So I can do that. We're going to use a data source or data sources. So for a data source, so if you go onto your Amazon, we go onto your Terraform and just write Terraform data sources example. Terraform data sources, data source configuration. Data source configuration, as we say, this is now if we are using a data source to find the AMI, we will have to use this data block. We'll have to use this data block. But now, how do we find this data block? So let's go to a registry. Browse by provider, and let's go to AWS documentation, and we are trying to search for AMI. So AWS underscore AMI, right? We're trying to search for for our AMI. I guess we can just find such rates. So let's go to EC2. Let's go to EC2. EC2. Then we're trying to get an AMI. An AMI, that's a data source, because AMI is a property of EC2. So this is the example on how we can get an AMI, right? So I can copy this. Copy that. Then I can go back to my Sublime text editor. I can just paste it here, right? I can just paste it here. So now with this, you see that this is how now you can get the AMI of a data, or AMI as a data source, right? So it has what we call users. It has owners, right? Owners, and I'll show you how to get all this. Most recent is true. So this statement, most recent is true. It means that Terraform will go into AWS and it will look for the most recent AMI based on the filters that we are giving it right here, right? So based on the filters that we are passing, or the filters that we're giving it, so it will look for the most recent AMI. So let's see how we can do that. If we go to, let me pull these up. So if I go to back to my AWS console, I go to my AWS console. So let's say we have this AMI that we want to find, right? We have this AMI, so I can copy. Then I'll go to my AWS. I'll go on the AMIs. Once I go onto my AMIs, I want to search for this AMI, so I can paste that ID right there. Then enter, enter. So it has outputted for me. I have searched, and these are the details of this particular AMI. It has, this is the AMI name. This is the name of that particular AMI. That is the source. This is the owner, right? It is a public, right? It has the root device type, block devices, virtualization, okay? So now, because I've found this, I can copy this AMI name. I can copy, just Control C. I can copy that name. Then I'll come back down here and I'll just paste that name here, right? Now, I want Terraform to go onto AWS and search for an AMI. Now, in this, I'll apply filters. So one filter that I've put is name. So what is the name? The value of the name is this. I want it to search for this. But when you look at this AMI name, it has all these numbers, AMI-HVM, then -2, all these numbers, right? Then -x86GP2. So these numbers here, every time, because whenever a new AMI is created, maybe after 2 weeks or something like that, because the community is very active. So these numbers keep changing, right? Keep changing based on when the AMI was created, based on the updates and all that. So what I can do is now I can take all this out and just put an asterisk, right? meaning I want Terraform to search for any AMI, to search for any AMI or all AMIs that have this name with whatever number that is here. That's why I put an asterisk. So this will now be the name. So they will search for any AMI with this, but now it will get the most recent, right? It will get the most recent AMI. So the most recent. So what I'll do is that now I'll copy this. I will copy this, or I'll cut it from here and now put it here. This is the value. This is the name that I want it to search for. It will be, I'm applying a filter, it will be searching for this. Then the root device, right? If you look at the root device, right here, root device is EBS, right? Root device is EBS. Root device is EBS. Then virtualization is HVM. Virtualization is HVM. Then it equally has like architecture, x86-64. So what I can do, as a matter of fact, x86_64 is the architecture. So what I can do is that I can go back to this. So this is the architecture. So the architecture, I can add one more filter right here. And more filter, and I can say architecture. This is the architecture. Architecture. Then this architecture is x86. x86-64. So I can check this out, this architecture from here. So I'm searching for everything, all the AMIs, like it has a GP2 at the end, right? With that, this is the name, but the architecture is this. Virtualization, as we say, is HPM. The root device is that. And then who is the owner? The owners. There's a prerequisite. A prerequisite. When you look at the documentation, owners is a required, right? Owners is a required field now, and it gives you a list of all the required fields. So owners could be Amazon, it could be AWS Marketplace, it could be Microsoft, or you can use self. Self means if you've created your own AMIs, therefore you can use that self, right? Then if you did, all these are the arguments that you can put in filters. Now, regex expression, right? These are strings that can be applied to AMI lists returned by AWS. So this is when you want to do like complex filtering. So we will do away with the regex expression because we don't want anything complex, right? But then for the owners of this particular AMI, right? This particular AMI owners is Amazon, right? The owner is right here. The owner is Amazon. The owner is Amazon, and we don't want these executable users. We can take that out. Executable users. Right. So we have a simple, now this AMI, as we saw, we are trying to provision, we're trying to provision Amazon Linux. It's an Amazon Linux. So you can just give it Amazon Linux 2. That is the name of basically our data source, right? Amazon MyHKN VP2. So we are provisioning an Amazon Linux. Now we are now using this as our data source. So what we can do is now we can copy this. We can copy this, everything. We can copy that and then go back to our editor. Go back to our editor. And now in this editor right there, we can create another file. We are inside of this variable file, so we can create another file and we can call it data.tf. We're just creating a data source. Then with that data.tf, we can paste this. Now is our data source. So we are going to use this for it to fetch the AMI instead of us going onto the console to try and find the AMI and type the number. So we will dynamically get the AMI, right, using this data source. Now, since we now have a data source, so we'll go back to our instance. Now, here we had passed the AMI as a variable, okay? We had passed the AMI as a variable, this AMI, okay? So we won't need this AMI variable anymore. So what now we can do is we can just comment. We can comment. I can put a multi-line comment. We can comment this variable and then come to the end and put asterisk slash. So now we've commented this AMI variable. So this will not be used. We won't be needing this AMI again. But now, how do we call this data source? So how do we pass this data source? So if we want to make reference to it, it will now be AMI equals to, then we are using the data source. So the data source here, it will be, we will call it as data. We will call it as data dot, what is the data? AMI AWS underscore AMI, then dot, this is the resource type, then the resource name, this is the name of the resource, which is Amazon Linux, right? Amazon Linux, this is the resource type. But what do we want? We want the ID. We want that AMI ID. So the attribute will be ID, right? We want to get the ID of this. When Terraform goes and does the search, it will search for that particular name. It will filter and return for us the AMI ID, right? So now we will cut this from here. We'll just cut this, cut, and now go back to our EC2. Now where we have the AMI, now we will paste this. So now we are using a data source. We are using a data source as what? We're using a data source to be able to get our AMI dynamically. Okay. So now with that said, we will do what we will be able to save. Once this is saved, once that is saved, we've saved our instance. We have what I can do. Let me just we've saved. We have our provider block. We have our provider block. We have our EC2. Okay, this is outside. I'm inside of variables. Inside of these variables of my EC2. EC2. Okay. Inside of this variable block. Inside of the variable block. This is the variables. So I'm inside of the variable block. So inside of this variable block, I have my variables. Right. I have my security group. I have my provider. I have my EC2, which I'm using a data source for my AMI. Then I have the data. This is the data, and I have that particular script. So inside this I'll go into my variable. So I'll cd into variables. Once I cd into variables, if I ls, now I have this data source, EC2, provider, and security group, and the variable file. So now in here, I can run Terraform init. So once I initialize, because I already have the Terraform stack, it's now initialized. And then I can run Terraform validate my configuration. Configuration is good. Then I can run Terraform plan to see the plan, for it to generate for me a plan. And again, I get this error, which is something that I can feel that I can reset the token to AWS. My VS Code, it expires after a certain time, so I have to keep resetting it. So I can run the plan. Now it is going to generate for me the plan. Right. So now here it plans to add one thing, and what is going to add, it is basically going to replace this AWS EC2 instance that we had created yesterday, because now I am using a different AMI, right? I'm using a different AMI. I'm using an Amazon Linux AMI. But the thing is, how did it get this AMI? How did it get it? It get it using a data source. We didn't pass any AMI here, but it is going to find this AMI and automatically generate it and use it, because it is now using a data source. So now if we run apply, if we run Terraform apply, and I can auto approve it. I can auto approve it. So it is going to replace. It is first destroying that EC2 instance that we had created, because it has to replace the AMI. So it will destroy it first. It destroys it, then it brings it back up. It creates a new one. So right now it is still destroying. It's still destroying a particular instance. Still destroying it. Once it's done destroying it, if I go on my console and I look at my EC2, so you see it just terminated that. It just terminated that. Now it is now in the process of initializing, creating this. It is now initializing, right? It is initializing that. And it has a security group that it has attached to this allow TLS security group, right? And if we look at, if I look at it, it is, that is the ID. It is a platform, is the Amazon Linux, right? That is the, and this is the AMI name. This is the name that we had just passed. So it went ahead and searched for anything with this name, right? Anything with this name, but here we had passed an asterisk, meaning everything. So it will search and it will return the most recent being true, right? Then with that, it returned the ID. The ID, it returned this particular AMI ID. This is the instant type. We returned the AMI ID, and it used it now to create this. When you look at security, it attached this security group. So that's what we had. That's what we had defined in our files, right? So it has created it successfully. So it used this data source. It went to Amazon, found the AMI, returned the ID, then it used that ID. It injected that ID. This is the wrong. It injected that ID in our EC2 right here. It injected that ID here and basically used that to create the directory. Now, also on this, I can associate a key. Let's say I want to have to be able to log into this server. So right now, if I look at my server, this particular server, right? It's initializing. It's initializing, but if I click on it, right, and I click on connect, right? If I click on connect, what it's telling me is no associated key pair. So I don't have any associated. I haven't associated any key pair with this, right? This instance is not associated with a key pair. Without a key pair, you cannot connect the instance through SSH, right? You can connect using EC2 Instance Connect with just a valid username. You can connect using Session Manager if you have been granted the necessary permission. So like right now for this instance, because I didn't pass any key pair in it, I cannot use SSH to connect to it, right? So that means that I cannot SSH from my laptop. I cannot SSH into this. So when I create an instance, then you always need to associate a key pair to it, right? So if I go onto onto my terminal or my EC2 instance terminal, and I look at key pairs, I have these keys, right? So I can associate this key with that particular instance, right? Because this instance is running in the Oregon region. So I can associate this key pair, automation key, or I can create a new key pair. I can associate this key pair with my instance. So how do I do that? So I have this key called automation key. So what I can do now is go to my variable file. I can go to my variable file and create another variable, right? Okay, but since now I'm not using this AMI, no, okay, I can leave it there. I can leave it there and now just copy this. Just copy it, and I can put another variable. So this variable, I can just save it as my key pair, key underscore pair, right? Key underscore pair, the EC2 instance, key pair. Let's say key pair. Right. Description type is a string. And then this key, it was called automation key, right? This is the key that I have inside of my VS code, right? My AWS console. I have the key called automation key. So I'll put the name here, and then I'll come to my EC2 instance, and now here I will add a key name. What is the name of the key that I want to associate with? So I'll type key, then it is going to highlight it for you. It's a key name. So I'll put key name, but I'm calling it as a variable. So the key name is var dot key pair, right? Because the name of the variable that I had given it is called key pair. Inside of my variable file, it's called key pair. So this is going to be key name is var dot key pair. So now with that, then I can reapply it. I can save it. I can save this. Once it is automatically saved. It is automatically saved. Then what I can do is that I can run Terraform apply. So once I apply, it is going to refresh the state. Then once it refreshes the state, it will see that I'm changing it because now I need to associate a key pair to it. So what it will do is that it will destroy the instance. Once it destroys it will start it, because the instance that was created before, it didn't have a key pair associated with it, right? It didn't have a key pair. So now it is recreating it. It is going to terminate it, destroy it, and now starts creating it. And once it creates it, it will now associate it with a key. So if I go to my instances, now you see it has terminated that too. But now here it is bringing up this instance. And once it brings it up, you now see it has attached an automation key to it, a key name. These two did not have any key name associated to them. So with this key name, then I'm able to SSH, I'm able to log into this instance once once it initializes. So if If I click on that and I click on connect, now you see it's not giving me that warning anymore. So after it has initialized, I am able to use this SSH client, right? SSH client with this automation key.pam, which is in my download folder. So I'm able now to SSH into this instance, right? Using SSH. So now that's why you see how important it is that once you create an instance, you need to associate it. If you want to add SSH into it, then you need to associate a key pair. You need to add a key pair to it. So with that, I can then now be able to SSH into this particular instance. So I think it's still running. It's still running. It's still bootstrapping and connecting the script. But basically, we can now SSH into our server using that key pair. So if we go back, it has finished creating. It has finished creating. Now it has a key pair associated with it. Right. So with this, if I go back to my data sources, so we've looked at an example of how we had variables and we were able to pass all these variables, and we equally saw now how we were able to use a data source, right? We were able to use this data source to basically query AWS API to return data for us to be able to inject it into our EC2, to inject it into our EC2, like that as a data source. Then we instant type and the key pair. We had our provider, right? We had our provider set. These are similar configuration. They may look a little different from one in the VS Code, but this is the example that we just did. Now we also have another example here, whereby we have our same data source. We are using the same data source to get our AMI. Then we have our script. This is the same script that we are passing. We are bootstrapping. Then for instance, we are attaching, we are using an AMI. The instant type we're passing those variables. We're using user data, right? For our script, we have our key name, and we are attaching our VPC security group IDs. Now here, in this example, we are creating two security groups, right? We are creating two security groups. Now, if you look at these two security groups, we have this first security group, which we are calling VPC SSH. It is just opening port 22, right? It is opening port 22. Then I have another security group for the web, VPC web. It is opening port 80 and port 443, right? Port 80 and port 443. So with this, I'm able to create and attach now these two security group IDs. I'm passing them as a list, right? I'm passing them the IDs as a list. So this is the ID for the first security group, and this is comma, then this is the ID for the second security group. So I'm able to pass this as a list. So what I'll do is In fact, what I will do is that I will run them from here. This is on my IDE. It's an Atom IDE, so I can equally run this manifest or run Terraform because it's on Windows. I can equally run it from here. So if I just add my terminal, if I go to a terminal right here, which is the same thing as just using the VS Code. So I will be interchanging running from here and running on the VS Code. So I'm in the Terraform series. So if I go to if I CD into 05, if I CD into 05, I have to CD into Terraform first, CD into Terraform, series, then CD into 05, variables data source, then CD into manifest, then CD into example 2, right? So once I CD into example 2, if I ls right in there, I have I have my security group, I have my variables, I have my output and all that. Then one other thing that I need to make mention. So in this example, we are using an output block. Now we've used a data block, but now here we are using an output block. So for an output block, we want to output something, we want to get something out of that EC2 instance. So what are we outputting? So here we can see that we want to get the instant public IP. We want to get a public IP. So we are getting an output. Once the instance is created, then we are getting the public IP. We are also getting the public DNS. So it is going to output for us this particular DNS, right? DNS. So with this, the value of the public IP, it will be AWS instance. This is the resource type dot, this is the resource name, and then this is the attribute dot public IP. So if I look at my instance, it is resource type AWS instance dot resource name, my EC2 VM, right? This is my resource name, then dot public IP. Public IP is, as we saw yesterday, it is our attribute, what we want to get out of it. So we are declaring that in this output block. But before I do that, so what I will do, I'll go back into my VS Code and just run Terraform destroy. Terraform destroy dash order dash approve. Because now we've seen how we've used all this. Then I'll switch to my automator and we run it again. We run it from there. So it is destroying everything. So here we had just passed one security group, but in that next example, we are running 2 security groups. So after it's done destroying, I'm also gonna delete these Terraform stat files, all these directories that are auto-generated by Terraform, just to keep the code clean. So I'll delete this backup. So basically, right now, this state file is empty because I've done destruction, but it has a shell because I initialized. So, but the backup, it still has the state. This is what you had created before. So that's why it is keeping it it as a backup. So it always keeps a backup in case you want to roll back, right? In case you want to roll back. So it will always create a backup state file for you. But the actual state file right now, because I've run destruction, it is not maintaining any state. So that's why your state file is empty. Your state file is empty. So what I'll do is that I'll just go ahead and just delete it. I will delete this backup. Delete this backup. Then I will delete this plugin file. And I also just delete our providers directory that we created with providers. So I have that window. Then I'll just run this from this editor. So I'm inside there. I can run Terraform in it. So it might also give me an error. Okay, so it has initialized. Then I'll run Terraform validate. Configuration is valid. Then I'll run Terraform plan. So in this particular plan, it is creating for me the security groups. It is creating for me the security group, the EC2 instance. It is creating the security group, this VPCSH, then VPC web, these two security groups. So it plans to add 3 things, right? And also I have now outputs, the instant public DNS and IP. Now it will be known after you run apply, after it creates it. That's why it is saying known after. So once you apply, then you will know. Once it creates it, then we'll be able to know what it is. So I can run Terraform apply auto approve. Once I auto approve, then now it is going to start creating for me those resources. All right. So now it has created those resources, and in my output, now it has given me the public IP. This is the public IP of the server that it just created. And this is the DNS name of the server that it just created. So now with this, I can go on the browser. I can just copy this IP and go on the browser. And instead of me going to the console to try and find the public IP of the server to be able to go on the browser. So I have declared it in my output, and therefore once Terraform creates it, it's going to give me an output. And the output that I was interested in is the public IP right here. So that's why I declared it in my output, right? In my output, I declare that I want my public IP, right? And I gave it the value, the public IP of this instance. Then I also wanted the public DNS of that particular instance. So if I go back to my this IP is 3.101.92.19. So if I go back to my console where my instances are running, actually now it's in a different region, US West 1. These are running in US West 1. US West 1. Now I see this instance that has just been created, EC2 demo. It's running in US West 1, and this is the IP 3.101.92.19, which is the same as what we have right here, 3.101.92.19. So it has outputted for us this public IP and the DNS name, right? And the DNS name. So with that, if you look at the DNS name, that is the name that it outputted for us. So then if we look at the security group, it attached two security groups, the VPC SH and VPC Web. These are the security groups that we created. Now, the first one, VPC SH, it only opened port 22. Port 22, right? It opened. But then for the web, it opened port 80 and port 443. So this security group has now been attached to our instance. It has been attached to our instance. We attach these two security groups, VPC SH and VPC Web, right? We are able to create this. So now with this, we come to the end of this video. At least today we learned about how we can use data sources, how we can attach key pair, and how we can attach multiple security groups on our instances. So during our next video, we will look at another concept in how we can use dynamic, what we're calling dynamic blocks, and we'll also look at now how we can utilize lists and maps, right? So until then, thank you for watching. Bye bye.